What happens when things outside the ring affect the world of wrestling? The company gets dirty, and WWE always tries to clean itself up from everything. For example, did you know that at one point in history, a video of Hulk Hogan with his friend's wife was leaked? Or, even worse, did you know that a WWE wrestler is accused of having ended his wife's life? Well, make yourself comfortable because now I'll stop talking and today I'll present to you 20 minutes of real controversies that happened in WWE. Lita and Matt Hardy were the perfect couple for many until Edge came between them and ended up with Lita. This was not part of the show at all, and it was a real-life story that ended with Matt Hardy being fired. One day, out of nowhere, he would appear on Raw without a contract with the company and directly attack Edge. The moment became completely tense in the arena, as people didn't really know what was happening. And the most surprising thing of all was that Matt Hardy would call Edge by his real name, Adam, making it more than clear to us that this problem was part of his real life. Many former WWE superstars have revealed in different documentaries and reports about this story. How tense was the atmosphere backstage, where they had to share, both with Edge and Lita, and also with Matt, who after all this controversy would be rehired and put in an on-screen feud with Edge. The moment went from something adrenaline-filled to something really serious, since the fans knew this wasn't just an ordinary rivalry, unlike the others, because it wasn't scripted and it was being taken from real life to the ring. Hulk Hogan was one of the superstars who charged large sums of money for taking pictures with fans and also for autographs. However, a fan of the Hulkster did everything possible to give him a commemorative replica of the World Heavyweight title as a gift, valued at approximately dollars estadounidenses, United States dollars, 2,500. According to the fan, Hogan was very happy with this gift. Beyond the fans' happiness for having taken a picture with his idol and for giving him this gift, a tremendous sadness would also come for him. It turns out that this guy, a few days later, saw that the title he gave to Holster was being sold on Hogan's website for dollars estadounidenses, United States dollars, 5,000. In other words, Hulk Hogan was reselling the title that this fan had given him as a gift. The same fan was the one who shared this sad and unfortunate story in a Facebook group where he felt quite embarrassed by this gesture from his childhood idol. Obviously, the entire fan community went after Hogan to criticize him for this horrible act, but well, if you think this is a lot, just wait to see what's coming next. On the Friday, April 4th, 2025 show, Stratton and Charlotte Flair were invited to a segment in the SmackDown ring. All of this was to promote their big match for WrestleMania 41 in the city of Las Vegas. At that time, Wade Barrett was standing between them and asked Charlotte specifically why she had chosen Tiffany Stratton. This would lead to a verbal war between the two. In reality, multiple reports came out confirming that what Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton said to each other in the ring was not scripted at all. Things started to get tense between them, especially when Tiffany Stratton reminded Charlotte Flair that she was living in Ric Flair's shadow, and that she was even the daughter of nepotism, implying that the only reason she's in WWE and everything she's achieved is purely because of her father. Charlotte Flair's uncomfortable expression was obvious to the entire WWE universe. In fact, the crowd was on Tiffany Stratton's side, and when Charlotte Flair tried to speak, they wouldn't let her. This would finally culminate when Tiffany Stratton told Charlotte Flair to her face that after WrestleMania 41, she would end up just like she is in real life, completely alone. At the same time, Tiffany Stratton also mentioned Charlotte Flair's brand to her. "What's your brand?" She told her 0 for 3, meaning that none of the marriages she's had have lasted and she's ended up separating 3 times. Charlotte Flair's face was a mix of anger, and honestly, she didn't even know how to respond. The first thing that came to Queen Flair's mind was to tell her that Ludwig Kaiser, Tiffany Stratton's partner, was sending her direct messages on Instagram. This confused us. Would it really confirm that this verbal war was actually real and direct? Apparently, if Tiffany Stratton also threw several direct jabs at Charlotte Flair, it seems that Ludwig Kaiser may be the main reason for the hatred between the two of them. Wow. Apparently, Charlotte Flair didn't know what else to say. Her uncomfortable expression was obvious and confirmed it to the entire WWE universe. That she was not satisfied at all with the words. I swear that Joe... I've already lost it. Listen, haven't you? However, Lance Storm's website from those years exploded with questions about whether the match was really planned that way, or if Regal had gone too far. With Lance Storm in the ring, this would be answered by Lance Storm himself, who said that the match was planned to look that way, and even Regal's nosebleed was also meant to happen. It only took one match for Randy Orton to end up permanently blocking Mr. Kennedy in WWE. This last wrestler was making his return to WWE in 2009. And during a match on Monday Night Raw, Kennedy delivered a back suplex that made Orton fall in the worst possible way. Could you see Randy Orton's real annoyance that time? For Orton, this wasn't just a careless move, but rather an extremely dangerous one. Orton's fury wouldn't just stay in the ring. Several reports indicate that the Viper stormed into Vince's office after the match. McMahon arguing that it wasn't safe to work with Mr. Kennedy and that he would never wrestle with Kennedy again. Reports indicate that John Cena would join Randy Orton in this complaint, and together they convinced McMahon about Kennedy. He was not only a nuisance to them, but also a nuisance to the company. After that, UPS. We would just see WWE.com announce that Mr. Kennedy had been fired from the company. And precisely that match with Orton would end up being his last fight. Randy Orton, despite having asked to never work with him again. Apparently, along with John Cena, they also requested Mr. Kennedy's dismissal. Mr. Kennedy would later claim in several interviews that it was Randy Orton who definitely blocked him in WWE. Let's move on to another story. What do you think Stone Cold did when he didn't want to lose a match in WWE against Brock Lesnar? And was the match being promoted for that same night? Stone Cold has never had a problem saying that he takes great care of his reputation as a wrestler. And that, in 2002, meant saying no to a qualifying match for the King of the Ring tournament. They wanted him to face Brock Lesnar and lose cleanly to him, obviously all of this to boost Lesnar and give his character more credibility. Stone Cold said years later that he didn't want to lose to Lesnar in a match with no storyline, no big reward, and that everything was just for free. Just like that, meaning that his loss to Lesnar would be pointless and wouldn't have a great story to convince the fans that he really lost. Stone Cold openly said that he knew Brock Lesnar had potential and that he was the right one to take the company to the next level. But not that way. But what happened? Why was the match with Brock Lesnar announced for that same night in WWE and it didn't happen? It turns out that Austin left before the match and disappeared from WWE for 2 months, causing a lot of controversy and problems backstage. When Austin came back, WWE wanted to bury him publicly on live shows, and you can't deny that all the fans definitely noticed that. In October 2012, the website Gawker, known for its provocative style and its drive to expose the private lives of celebrities, published a snippet of a forbidden video of Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? The content of this video is something that can't be shown on these platforms, but in it you could see the Hulkster getting intimate with Hyder Cole, the ex-wife of his best friend, Bubba the Love Sponge, a well-known disc jockey of that time. The video, just a minute and a half long, was taken from a 30-minute recording made without consent in 2006 when the Hulkster and his best friend's wife were having an affair. The problem with all of this is that Hogan was also in a relationship with his longtime wife, Linda. After that, a few months went by and they ended up getting divorced. The celebrity community came out in full force to attack the Hulkster for behaving so badly. with his friend who at that moment was working at a famous nightclub in Miami, Florida. The video went viral, more than 5 million people watched it, and the damage to the wrestler's public image was devastating. Hogan responded with a $100 million lawsuit for invasion of his privacy. At SummerSlam in 2016, there would be an incredible match, very violent by the way, between Randy Orton versus Brock Lesnar. At one point in the match, Lesnar hit Orton's skull with brutal forearms, which caused Randy's head to split open. The referee called for the bell, and the crowd was in true shock, not knowing if what they were seeing was real or not. This ending, the one for the event, was so convincing that even Chris Jericho himself. After the match, he had a real argument with Brock Lesnar after insulting him for the damage he had done to Randy Orton. That is, not even the wrestlers knew that this way of ending the match was planned. This is one of the real stories that WWE turned into the most convincing script in WWE history. In 1995, Shawn Michaels was at the peak of his career until he got into a real fight with some Marines outside a bar that almost cost him his life. He suffered such serious injuries that he was forced to relinquish the Intercontinental Championship. This incident left Michaels with 2 black eyes, a lacerated eyelid, and blood constantly coming out of his ears. But what did WWE do with this whole story? The company tried to give it a real angle and would turn it into one of the most realistic stories of that era. Since they saw that Michaels wouldn't be able to keep wrestling for a while, they found nothing better than to take him off screen. With a tremendous kick from Owen Hart in a match they were having on Monday Night Raw, a silence filled the arena, no one said anything, and we only saw Vince McMahon with a team of doctors and an oxygen tube. Everyone's concern was real. Michaels was taken out on a stretcher, and the fans were worried because no one knew if they had just witnessed a medical emergency. But that wouldn't be the only time WWE would use a medical emergency. In one of their storylines on the October 22, 2021 episode of SmackDown, fans witnessed one of the most awkward moments of recent years. Sonya Deville, who was the general manager of SmackDown, called Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch to the ring, so that both of them could exchange their titles, since each champion had to have the title corresponding to her brand. The ego of both wrestlers made neither of them want to hand over the title. Well, according to a strong backstage rumor, Becky Lynch wanted to take advantage of this moment to raise both titles at the same time in front of the audience. When Charlotte was about to hand over her title, she realized that Becky Lynch wanted to take it, and that's how Charlotte Flair stopped her and ended up throwing it to the ground. After that, Charlotte handed it to Sonya Deville, and Becky Lynch once again tried to snatch it from her hands, something that Sonya also denied her. Becky Lynch didn't know what to do and found nothing better than to throw the title at Charlotte in the worst way. The discomfort was completely reflected on Sonya Deville's face, who didn't know what to do at that moment. The Undertaker made his debut in the year 1905. Back then, his character was totally original and caused a lot of fear and amazement among the fans of that time. The following year, Hulk Hogan faced Undertaker in the main event of Survivor Series 1991. And the storyline was quite intriguing since it was a clash of titans, with Hogan as the superhero facing a supernatural enemy. Neither Hogan nor Undertaker were excellent wrestlers in the ring. The match had the atmosphere of a big fight, and the crowd was on the edge of their seats with every exchange. The match continued, and Undertaker dominated most of the bout, but towards the end of the fight, Ric Flair interfered and slid a chair into the ring. Hogan got distracted by Paul Varel, and the Undertaker took advantage to lift him up and hit him with the Tombstone Piledriver, slamming his head onto the steel chair. Despite how devastating it looked, the move in slow motion was without a doubt one of the safest finishers applied, since Undertaker's knees absorbed the impact while his opponent's head remained safe. However, Hogan lied and at that moment told The Undertaker that he had really hurt him. Undertaker was 24 years old at that time, and according to him, he was devastated for having injured the most important wrestler in the company. and he knew that at any moment he could be fired from WWE. Finally, many wrestlers backstage told Undertaker not to feel guilty and to watch the video again, because Hogan's neck never touched the chair and most likely it was all a lie. At this point, Hogan had already spoken with Vince McMahon to accuse Undertaker about this incident and to request his release from the company. Finally, Undertaker watched the recording tape, realized what had happened, and went to confront Hogan. Undertaker confronted him for lying about his injury, and in response, Hogan made up an unconvincing excuse. He said that his neck was now twisted because Undertaker had squeezed his knees too tightly around his head, and that was what caused the injury. Since that 1991 incident, Undertaker and Hogan were never great friends, and Undertaker tells this story every time he's asked about it. Nancy, an Argentinian, 23 years old, lived in Brooklyn, New York, and had a long history with wrestling. But not because she was a wrestler, but because she was unofficially engaged to one of the biggest superstars of the 80s. We're talking about Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Tamina's father. Nancy, in short, was Superfly's lover, but Nancy became a key part of Jimmy's story, traveling with him on all his tours and always supporting him in his wrestling world, since she was also a big fan of it. However, everything would change for the worse on May 10, 1983, when both of them checked into the George Washington Motor Lodge in Pennsylvania, not far from where Jimmy was supposed to wrestle for the World Wrestling Federation just a few days later. At that moment, no one knew that this would be the last motel room Nancy and Jimmy would share together. Within a matter of hours, an emergency call was made to the police to report that Nancy was not doing well. She was rushed to the nearest hospital. However, upon arriving at the hospital, they confirmed that Nancy Argentino was not alive, and the last person who saw her safe and sound was Jimmy Snuka, according to Jimmy's version. To the first 5 people who asked him, including the first local police officer, he said that Nancy had fallen and hit her head very hard because the two of them had argued and she fell accidentally. However, Jimmy's version would soon change, and he would say that Nancy had fallen while taking a bath and had hit her head brutally. However, due to the revelations from the official autopsy, the local court decided to investigate this a bit further, since, according to them, things were not as he said. Jimmy Snuka, a well-known media outlet, confirmed a private meeting between Judge Vince McMahon and Jimmy Snuka in an office. And later, Vince McMahon, out of his own pocket, would offer Nancy's family dollars estadounidenses, United States dollars, $25,000 for the case to end there. However, they rejected this money and have continued to blame Jimmy Snuka to this day, since the autopsy itself revealed that she suffered severe abuse before her life was taken. And the only person who was in her room was him. In 2015, Snuka would be declared guilty. However, he never spent a single day in jail because he claimed to have dementia. But that would be quite questionable because that same year we would even see him wrestling in England.